Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. I'm Kamen Enchev with Tom Castleman. We've got a jam-packed show for you guys today. Who says it's a slow time in sports? NBA Finals wrapping up. We'll talk about Steph Curry's legacy. Is he top 10 all-time? Is he not? Plus, it's the NBA draft coming up. Who's the best pick in this draft? Who's going to go number one? Who should go number one? A lot of good stuff on the docket. And how about this? An NFL legend retires. We'll get into that as well. Stanley Cup Finals. We've got hockey. We've got golf on the program. Betting locks of the week, sports trivia, and so much more, Tom. I'm fired up for a great show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, but not nearly as well as Rob Gronkowski entering retirement for the second time in his life and on considerably better circumstances, I might add. He seemed really downtrodden and quite frankly, just depressed when he'd retired the first time after a really tough couple of seasons in New England where he was just battling injuries back and forth. Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay. Rob Gronkowski comes out of retirement. The two franchises facilitated trade to get Gronkowski to Tampa, where he goes ahead and wins yet another Super Bowl with Tom Brady. So a fantastic story there. Plays one more season. And I think at this point, probably walking away for good, arguably, greatest tight end of all time. Could he come back? Sure. But at this point, it definitely seems from his comments that he's a lot more at peace with where he is right now. He's not leaving out of like a physical bodily necessity. I think he's pretty satisfied with where he's at. So, Common, what are your thoughts on his retirement? I'm not sure if you want to take this to, is he the greatest tight end of all time? If you want to take this to just kind of commenting in general about him, I mean, certainly greatest tight end that we've seen in the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I think he's number two. I think he's number two all time. That's where I've got him right now. You look at the resume, five-time Pro Bowler. He's got 4 Super Bowl championships, 4-time first-team All-Pro. He's second all-time in career postseason receiving touchdowns. 92 touchdown catches is the third most ever among tight ends, just behind Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, those big beasts. So I think you look at statistically, he's actually a little bit behind Antonio Gates, a little bit behind Jason Witten as far as regular season numbers go. But you take a look at the postseason, he's achieved a lot more than those guys as far as wins, as far as stats. Tony Gonzalez has a pretty high edge if you look at the yards and the catches and just everything that he's done. So to me, Tony Gonzalez is a close number one. Then we got Gronk, a close number two because of the postseason success. And then it's like Gates and Jason Witten are in that 3-4 range. Travis Kelce right now is number 5 to me. I think by the time Kelce gets done, though, is going to be 2 or 1 all time. I think it's going to be probably 2 Kansas City Chief guys, 1 and 2 each, Gonzalez and Kelce. But right now, I think Gronk, to me, is number 2 all time for tight ends. His career speaks for itself, just an electric player. Whether you got him 3rd, 4th, or even 1st, I don't take offense to any of that. I mean, if you're top 5 all time in your position, you are definitely legitimately great. And again, he did it in the regular season. He did it in the postseason. Pretty much nothing bad you could say about Gronk, at least on the field. Fantastic player, true legend of the game retiring today.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is one of those, debates that you could have. You can look at all those counting stats and you can kind of compare and contrast the longevity versus the peak. And there's no question that while Rob Gronkowski doesn't have the longevity that a lot of those guys you mentioned, have, or perhaps as Kelce's going along is going to have, certainly at his peak, he was just dominant, both as an inline blocker, really committed to that part of the game, which is, not really glamorous, but really, really important to how the modern offense works in the NFL. So, I don't really have a ranking as far as tight ends go. Like, obviously, I think he's, top 5 all time. You'd have to do some era comparisons because you got guys, like Mike Ditka, where does he rank type of thing. If we're going to go with like a Chicago connection
Kellen Winslow, Mizzou Tiger.
Absolutely, yeah. But, Rob Gronkowski plagued by injuries a lot throughout his career, drafted 2nd round in the 2010 draft, and then took, I believe it was 1 or 2 seasons off where he was retired before Tom Brady said, hey, why don't you come to Tampa with me? I think he was gone for just the 2019-2020 season and then came back the following year. So, I mean, happy trails to him, as Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon might say on their programming. Certainly a great career for a great player. Speaking of great careers and great players, although he's certainly very, very far from done, Golden State Warriors winning the NBA Finals 4-2. Fourth championship in 8 seasons for the Warriors. Had their parade. Was that yes? I think that's today, correct? The parade's today.
The parade was we're recording on Tuesday. It was Monday. It was yesterday.
That was Monday.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Klay Thompson was having a lot of fun. We'll say that for sure. A lot of fun for Klay.
And Steph Curry, I mean, we talked about this all throughout, previewing and talking about the finals as they were in session. Steph Curry getting that, kind of like last little missing piece of the puzzle, winning finals MVP, certainly dominant in that regard, where he had really one off game, and Golden State was able to win in spite of that. So as far as Steph Curry stands, does he rank as a top 5, or not top 5, a top 10 player of all time? If you want to try to go top 5, you certainly can. I'm not sure how you're going to rank him, because I certainly know you're high on Steph Curry's game.
Absolutely, I am.
But top 10 player all time, and, just kind of like we'll just take it from there.
Yeah, so Tom, I told you he was going to have a historic finals. I said he's going to be one of the best finals ever, given that it was against the number 1 defense in the league, the defensive player of the year. It was one of truly the best finals of all time. If you look at true field goal percentage, efficiency, all those numbers, he wasn't even putting up like a ton of shots. He could have shot the ball even more. So legendary finals performance, capping a legendary resume, Tom. He's not done yet. You said top 5. I'm not ready to put him there, but he has potential. He is hands down definitely in the top 10 all time for me right now. So here's some of the accolades, Tom. He is the 5th player ever in the history of the National Basketball Association. It's Steph Curry and 4 other guys that have achieved this. I'll get into this during sports trivia, so don't try and guess them now. But 5th guy ever to win multiple MVPs, the NBA Finals MVP, and the scoring title. He's got 2 of those, by the way, in case you're wondering. So he's got 2 MVPs, 2 scoring titles, 4 rings. We talk about him not playing defense. He's even led the league in steals before, a 50, 40, 90 guy before. Here's one of my favorite statistics, Tom. He is 6th all-time in NBA history in true field goal percentage. True field goal percentage takes into account the 3s, the 2s, and the free throws. How efficient are you? Obviously, a guy shooting, 42% from 3 compared to a guy shooting, you shoot 42% from 3, 48% overall. A guy shoots 51%, but doesn't take any 3s or shoots, 5-10% from 3. The 3-point guy is more efficient. So true field goal percentage, it is a very important statistic. He is 6th all-time in history. The 5 guys ahead of him, Tom: Rudy Gobert, Artis Gilmore, DeAndre Jordan, Cedric Maxwell, and Tyson Chandler, a.k.a. not great scorers. None of those guys averaged more than 20 a game over their career. So he is statistically the most efficient scorer in the history of the Basketball Association. I compare him to a guy like Kobe, a guy that, gets a lot of love. Kobe over his career, 25 points per game. Steph right now, 24.3. But Steph averages 6.5 assists. Kobe had just 4.7. So he's actually accounting for more points per game than Kobe Bryant did in his NBA career. You take a look at what he does. I always tell you this, Tom. He's better than just the stats tell you. He's the most efficient scorer. He's the best 3-point shooter of all time. But he gets a ton of hockey assists. Teams double, triple team him. He gets a lot of the assists to the guy that gets the assist. And he's not like, stat padding. He's so efficient. Like, he's played with Kevin Durant, even Klay. Like, on any given night, he's happy to let one of his teammates put on a show. So if he played on another team, he could have even better statistics if we're looking at points per game. I mean, he's shown when he has to be the guy, he can score at will. He's also shown when one of his teammates is hot, he's willing to let them do their thing. And that is why he's better than Kevin Durant. Talent-wise, Kevin Durant, I think, might be a little bit better given his height. But Curry makes his teammates better, more than Kevin Durant does. He's a leader. They'll go out there and die for him. If we're talking about top 10 greatest players, you got to also look at the impact you have on your teammates as well as the game as a whole. And Curry has more of a positive impact on and off the court than Kevin Durant does. So, I mean, I brought up Kobe and Durant as two more similar era comparisons to Curry. By the way, Curry has 2 scoring titles. Kobe, 2 scoring titles. We think of Kobe as the big scorer. Curry has 1 more MVP than Kobe, and he's got the same amount of scoring titles as Kobe. So my top 10, MJ number 1, LeBron number 2. LeBron could pass him. Again, depends on where you land on the longevity versus not. I look at prime MJ as number 1, prime LeBron as number 2. LeBron with potential to get that number 1 spot, but for now I'm going MJ 1, LeBron 2, Wilt Chamberlain number 3. I think Wilt is the most underrated player historically. He averaged 50 and 25 in a season, behind Jordan, most points per game over a career. I don't care who he did it against. You average 50 and 25 in a season, 30 and 22 for a career. No one's ever done that. So Wilt gets my number 3 spot. Magic is 4th for me. Most assists per game in the history of basketball. He was a good rebounder, a good defender. Magic did it all. Larry Bird, magical passer. He could shoot. Talk about a guy who impacted the game. Larry Bird, again, maybe not as gifted as Kevin Durant physically, but skill-wise and ability to lift his teammates-wise, Bird gets the 5 spot. If we're talking longevity, Kareem is my 6th guy of all time. Obviously, the NBA's all-time scoring leader. He's got tons of MVPs. Then I've got Shaq at number 7. I think Shaq was the most dominant player I've ever watched growing up. I know I started watching right after Jordan. I've watched those Jordan games on YouTube. So, but in my time watching regularly, Shaq dominated the league more than even anyone else does now. And Shaq had Penny, he had Wade, he had Kobe. Talk about a guy who would have had better stats. That's the guy right there, Shaquille O'Neal. Mm-hmm. So I got Shaq at 7. I got Curry at 8. I think Curry's going to pass up Shaq by the time he's done. I think he might pass up Kareem, could even pass up Magic. We'll see. There's, time to be had. But at worst, I've got Curry right now at 8, even if he retires tomorrow. I've got Curry at 8. Durant, I have at 9. Durant, a little bit better stats than Curry. Not the same team success. Then 10, I struggle with 10. You could go with Oscar Robertson, almost averaged a triple-double in his career. Jerry West, the logo, had more points and assists than Kobe Bryant, did it more efficiently. Different era. You could also go with Kobe. You can go with Tim Duncan. You could go with Hakeem Olajuwon, who was great on both ends. Any one of those guys I'm okay with at the 10 spot. But I have Curry at 8. He revolutionized the game. The game changed because of him, because of the three-point shot. And I love efficiency, Tom. And he is statistically the best true field goal percentage guy in NBA history. I have a hard time leaving off a 2-time MVP, a 4-time champion, and statistically the most efficient scorer of all time off my top 10 list. He's not the greatest defender, but he did lead the league in steals before. He's very pesky. He's a little bit better than people give him credit for. And you know where I stand on this, Tom. A great offense beats great defense. I'm not saying defense doesn't matter, but I do think that it gets a little overrated. I have no problem putting Curry as the 8th best all time, even if he wasn't a lockdown defender.
Yeah, I have him right on that borderline for me as far as top 10. I mean, in no particular order, these are the people I've got in front of him in terms of, pretty much a lot of the same as you. Wilt, Kareem, James, Jordan, Bird, Magic. I like Bill Russell. I know you're going to just absolutely trash him, but it's hard to look at his overall accomplishments as a player and being, I believe, a 5-time MVP. Or he won several MVPs, being the best player on those dominant Celtics teams. Also like Shaq, Oscar Robertson, and Tim Duncan as well. So it kind of comes down to positional value and Tim Duncan is a is if you put like Tim Duncan and Steph Curry like right next to each other, for example, obviously wildly different skill sets, which is why it's hard for me to say one's definitely 10, one's definitely 11 type of thing. So I put him in that cloud kind of below like the Jordan, James, Kareem, Wilt, even like Bird and Magic. Like those are all incredibly safe names in a top 10. And if you want to start getting into that cloud of, 7 through 11, 12, something like
Pretty
that,
close.
where you got, Russell O'Neal, you've got Robertson, Duncan, Curry, obviously Kobe, you put him in that as well because there's a little bit of intangible to greatness as far as, sure, Kobe wasn't, the most efficient player necessarily.
Most misses of all time.
But you look at, how he plays and the impact that he has, and you can't say that he wasn't great type of thing.
Oh, he was great. Absolutely.
So
I think Kobe was a great player. Curry, though, just better efficiency than Kobe by a lot while putting up very similar stats. But, I mean, Kobe's great. I just get slammed for not putting Kobe in the top 10, Tom. I think he's in the discussion. And tangibles, like you mentioned, I just look at him. He's not top 10 all time in career points per game. And I have a hard time putting him in the top 10. That's his greatest skill set. He gets a little too much hype for that. Real quickly, Bill Russell. I'm not going to spend forever on it, but you know where I stand on this.
Yes.
Bill Russell is like a 14, 15 point per game scorer, like a 45% field goal shooter as a big man. Just not a good enough scorer to be top 10 all time. Obviously a great rebounder, great defensive player, great leader. He could score in certain moments, but, you compare him to all the greats. He is so far behind him in scoring. I don't care how many ships he won. I cannot put Bill Russell in my top 10 personally. But otherwise, we're very much on the same page here. I think there's, MJ and LeBron, to me, are probably a class above the rest. But you look at that, like those two in the top, maybe Wilt for me is the third guy. Then you look at the guys who are 4 through 7 are pretty close. 7 through 15 are pretty close. Obviously depends on the team you have and the era that you're in. But to me, you got to put Steph Curry in the top 10. He is just an incredible player. And really, in many ways, you can argue for him being maybe the most skilled player ever because of his shooting and his passing that's greatly underrated. He certainly doesn't have the athleticism and the size of pretty much any of these guys we're talking about here. I know this doesn't really factor into the discussion because part of why LeBron is so great is because of his size, but I'm just so impressed with what Steph Curry has done over his career. And I think his ability to finish at the rim with layups is so underrated. His ability to pass the basketball is so underrated. I actually think Curry as a player is underrated because we get so lost in his three-point shooting that we forget how good he is at everything else.
Absolutely. Well, certainly Curry was not the only reason that Golden State won the NBA Finals, though, of course, being MVP and putting up the numbers that he did. Kama, what stood out to you as some of the other key factors as to why the Warriors were able to host Larry O'Brien's trophy at the end of that series?
Absolutely. So, yeah, like you said, Curry Finals MVP, more than 30 points a game, close to 63% true field goal percentage, great individual offense against the best defensive team in the league. But he did get some help later on in the series. Really, the series took off when he got help from his teammates. 4 games in, it was 2-2, and it was the Stephen Curry show. In game 5 and 6, Klay Thompson came to play a little bit. Andrew Wiggins came to play big time. Andrew Wiggins was, without question, the second best player, not only on the Warriors, but in the entire series. 18 points, 9 rebounds a game. He was fantastic, played some great defense. Defense was the biggest key, though. Boston averaged 100.8 points per game in this series, shot 43.5% from the field, averaged about 16 turnovers a game. The Warriors took advantage of Boston's weakness, what you and I talked about. No true ball handling. Marcus Smart, not a traditional point guard. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, not great at dribbling. That's where you get 16 turnovers a game. Jason Tatum, I'll have more on him later in the program, but, he shot 36.7% from the floor, averaged about 4 turnovers a game. He was the biggest reason Boston lost, but Golden State has to get some credit for slowing them down. But to me, the biggest X factor was actually Boston's lack of ability to use their size advantage. I think the turnover is not necessarily surprising given Golden State plays great defense. Even Curry, who, like I said, did lead the league in steals a few years back, does get a lot of steals. Draymond can get steals. Wiggins, like, Warriors are pesky. They know how to get steals. They know how to turn you over. However, it was supposed to be the Warriors' size that was going to be their undoing. Boston, a more physical team, more athletic, a stronger team. They averaged about 43 rebounds a game in this series. Golden State about 42. So it was like barely any difference in rebounding. And that was it. They found a way to not let Boston dominate them with size. Boston's 2-point shooting in this series was horrendous. They shot 43.5 for the series, but they were like 40% from three. So they did well enough from three. They just couldn't make twos, and they didn't have enough possessions, as you harped on last week. Not enough possessions for Boston. So terrible Boston offense combined with great Warriors defense was the reason Golden State won the series beyond Steph's incredible play.
Yeah, you look at the shooting percentages, at least team-wise, Game 6, not all that different. Boston shooting 42.5% from the field, 39.3% from three, compared to 41.3% for just regular field and three-point. The difference is the number of shots. Golden State took 92 shots. Boston took 80. So that ties in exactly what you were saying. Not as much of an advantage on the sides that Boston could have capitalized on, which I thought was going to be the reason that they would win the series. I mean, stars are going to be stars as far as that goes, but you need some small things to win. And Boston didn't do the small things to win. Turning the ball over, you got 15 turnovers out of Golden State in Game 6. That doesn't help when you're giving up 22 yourself, which is an astronomical number.
Yikes.
So I think that's a pretty big reason of it. And then, of course, like, these are young guys, these are stars. So, they're in their early to mid 20s. They're in the prime of their careers, but I can't help but feel as if, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown especially got a little bit worn down. I mean, they went to how many Game 7s they swept through Brooklyn. They go all the way to Game 7 against Milwaukee. They go all the way to Game 7 against Miami. It definitely feels like part of the reason behind the not as efficient performance that they had, a little bit uneven performance, not being as careful with the ball, missing some shots that, very well could have easily gone in, but just come up a little short, a little, left or right, something like that. Probably because these guys are really, really tired, because as you go on in the playoffs, your rotation gets a lot shorter. And even with all these extra days off that they build in, that's still a ton of basketball to be playing, and a big load that they're shouldering, because Tatum and Brown are not only the most important players on the offensive end, they're among the most important players on the defensive end. They're really good two-way players in that regard, which is kind of rare with NBA stars. So I think that's probably a big reason as well as to why they didn't have success, why they weren't able to push to a Game 7 or even win the title outright. So just more shots for Golden State, better defense overall from Golden State, and then just tired legs and inefficient offense for Boston. I think the problems are pretty fixable on their end in terms of at least identifying need. I'm not sure, asset breakdown, whether draft picks or how much money they have available to go and fill, say, a primary ball handler type of thing. I don't know what they can do off-season wise. They need one. I'm not sure how they get it exactly, because I'm not that in the weeds as far as Boston's assets go. But at least I think they have a pretty clear-cut path forward, because defense is probably going to carry over so long as that effort is there. They know that they have the individual talent on offense. They just need a little bit better distribution, a little bit better process on that floor. Great model. Just look right across the bench, Steve Kerr, and what he's been able to put in place. Great all-time great scorers that also work incredibly well within a system, so that while Steph can be amazing, he doesn't strictly have to be in order for Golden State to win the title. That's when you've got a really, really good team, perhaps even a dynasty, which I guess can be, the next step going ahead for Golden State in as far as at least their narrative, their conversation. Do you think they're a dynasty currently? Do you think that they need something more to become a dynasty?
I think this is a dynasty right here. This team is a dynasty to me. I mean, they had the original dynasty where they won 3 and 4 years. This squad right here, to me, is a dynasty. I think there's a lot of question marks all over the league. We'll get into the Boston here in a little bit, but I think what Steph did at 34, I know the first thing people are going to say, he's getting older. He just dominated at 34. You kidding me? One of the best things about Steph Curry is he's always been a low minutes guy. He actually hasn't played for the Olympic team very much. He's actually missing that Olympic gold medal, as they were listing off stuff that he doesn't have. So he hasn't had the same wear and tear. I know Klay Thompson's been hurt, but he's actually hasn't had that same wear and tear by missing time the last few years. So I think those old guys are going to be pretty good. I think shooting doesn't escape you as much as other skills. I mean, like I said, Steph is a great dribbler. He's a great passer. He's a great finisher, but he doesn't dominate because he's the greatest athlete. Same deal for Klay. He's a catch and shoot guy. Like, these guys have the potential to be dominant for at least another 3 years in their prime. What does it take to be a dynasty? To me, Tom, you got to win at least 2 rings in a 3 or 4 year span. Maybe win 3. I know 3 in a row is something we're looking for, but I consider a dynasty a team that's winning multiple titles and competing for multiple titles in the span of a 3 to 4 year span. And I see this team being able to do it, because think about this. Like, look at the rest of the players around them. Andrew Wiggins is 27. He's a former first overall pick. He played an incredible finals series. He's an incredible athlete. You talk about guys that can play offense and defense. That's Andrew Wiggins for you there, a modern-day two-way player in the prime of his career. Any little bit that they'll lose with Klay or even Steph, and I've been here on this program telling you Steph is still got it. He's still got it. He's not leaving the prime yet, and we saw it in these finals. Maybe Klay is leaving it a little bit, but Wiggins is stepping up. Jordan Poole is just a kid. Jordan Poole played incredible this season. Imagine how much confidence those two guys are going to have. And with so much focus on Steph and Klay on the court, those two can just go out and play basketball. Draymond Green, he's never been the greatest, talent, but he can still have that leadership, that impact. That's not going to change. And how about some of these other guys that didn't even play or barely played in the finals? I mean, James Wiseman was the 2020 number 2 overall draft pick. Steph Curry laid out his goals for these guys a few years ago, and he thought that Wiseman could be an MVP candidate. That obviously is a stretch, I think, but the one thing they don't do is rebound and block shots. That's what James Wiseman does. They get him back in the lineup. Gary Payton, I think, was probably the most underrated player during their season. He was one of the best defensive players in the league, and he could shoot the ball. He can dunk. He had a lot of electric plays. He's still young. I mean, look at Kuminga, Juan Toscano-Anderson. These guys contributed when they had to be asked, and they didn't even play in the finals barely. There's so much young talent on this team. Steve Kerr is the most underappreciated coach in the league. What more does the guy have to do? He barely loses in the playoffs. I mean, put some respect on Steve Kerr's name. You wonder how all those guys, like you mentioned, all those stars, they buy in on defense, they buy in on teamwork, they buy in on ball movement. Who's the guy that's making that happen? Steve Kerr. He is hands down a top 5 coach in the league. We're talking about top 5 coaches, and I'm ashamed right now. I didn't even list him as a top 5 coach of the year in our argument about a month ago. The Warriors weren't even in the playoffs last year. I mean, come on. The whole team, the whole organization, they've got everything figured out, and whatever they're missing, you better believe they're going to get it. And that's the beauty of playing with Steph Curry. You look at Durant, people don't want to play with Kevin Durant. Everyone wants to play with Steph Curry. They want to have fun. They want to shoot threes. They want to win championships. And they want to be with the guy who's willing to share the spotlight when someone is hot. He is the most likable superstar in the league, along with Giannis. I think Giannis is likable. I think people want to play with LeBron because they know we can get him the ball. But when I'm thinking of guys that, you don't mind being a number 2 or number 3, That's the type of guy that Steph Curry is. So I think this team is going to win multiple championships. I think Curry's got at least 2 more championships in him. I think they're going back-to-back next year. Mark it down, back-to-back Warriors. They will win at least 2 of the next 3. Curry will get at least 6 championships, maybe 7. We've got a dynasty right here in Golden State. No weaknesses on this team. The only weakness might be the rebounding and shot blocking, and reinforcements are coming in. James Wiseman's coming in. Let's go. Dynasty.
I'm debating if I want to drive you up a wall or
Let's
not.
Let's go.
I am going to say that the Golden State Warriors are currently not a dynasty. I don't think you can have a dynasty if you've missed the playoffs 2 seasons in a row. So to clarify,
with injuries,
they had
they
had a dynasty. They won 3 titles. The
question mark is, will they be a dynasty? You're right. Like now, with 1 championship in 3 years, you're not a dynasty. Can they win multiple championships? Like, will they win a title in the next 3 years?
It all depends. It all depends on the window through which you're looking at. Because I approach this question 2 ways. One saying they're already a dynasty because they've won 4 titles in 8 years.
Sure.
And then the more antagonistic side of me saying that no, they had 2 years where they didn't even make the playoffs. I mean, even if you look at the San Antonio Spurs from when they won 1999, their first title, they were in the Western Conference playoffs pretty much every single year following, with the Tim Duncan, David Robinson, how they started out, and then bringing in Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. So even though they didn't have, say, back-to-back titles, I would say the Spurs were a dynasty for a decade plus. So I think you can go either way on this question. I think that obviously, like, winning in the NBA is really, really hard. Like, dynasty is kind of the default if you look at, recent history, going back from, you have Celtics and Lakers trading it off occasionally, 76ers are in there. Detroit wins a couple, then you've got Chicago winning 6. You got Houston even winning back-to-back. Then you have Spurs, Lakers, a couple other odd ones in there. I think we might be seeing a little bit of a shift away from dynasty, though, simply because, and we'll get into this a little bit with Boston as kind of a foil, a contrast for this, but nobody really thought Milwaukee was going to be like the A1 definite champion. But look at all the different things that led to the Milwaukee winning a title last year. You can look at even this season with Boston. We'll touch on them. All the little things that happened for them to be able to make it to the NBA Finals.
I will touch on that for sure.
Look at, even for Golden State, Golden State versus Phoenix. What kind of series is that if Phoenix is actually able to take advantage of, their size advantage over Dallas?
Golden State would win.
I'm saying, like, there's little things along the way. I don't think it's necessarily a slam dunk that Golden State was going to win the title heading into the playoffs. I thought it was pretty wide open.
I picked them to win it.
I picked them to win it. Well, sure, but I'm saying, like, it's not like they were a couple of years back, like when they had Kevin Durant type.
It wasn't a sure thing. That's fair.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying is, like, I think continuing to go forward, we're not really going to see back-to-back championships just because the league is so wide open and there's so much more parity in terms of how different things can happen in the playoffs. Kevin Durant's sneaker isn't touching the line. Maybe Brooklyn is hosting a trophy last season. Maybe James Harden is still on this year, and we're talking about Nets back. Like, there's so many what ifs in this scenario. Now, if I had to pick a team that I felt most confident to win, Golden State is incredibly stable across the board. So if you're thinking about this in as a wager standpoint or from like a stock standpoint, definitely buy yourself some Golden State Warriors. I'm going to pump the brakes on them winning back to back just because that's really, really difficult to do. And it's going to require, obviously, Steph and Clay and Draymond to still be the focal point, but they need more help around them, like you're saying. They need Jordan Poole to continue to develop. They need to be able to bring back Andrew Wiggins. They need to have an owner who's going to be willing to pay a luxury tax bill that's, $400 million for salary and luxury tax and everything. It's going to take a commitment, commitment that I think is going to be in place. Don't know for sure. So that's kind of the thing where there's going to be potentially some transition. So I like Golden State a lot. I think they've had a dynasty and or maybe are still in their dynasty and certainly can going forward. I'm not quite as bullish as you are as far as saying they're definitely going to win like 2 out of 3 type of thing.
Here's the question. In the next 3 years, will they win a championship again in the next 3 years? Put you on the spot. I know injuries can happen, blah, blah, blah. Just your gut feeling in the next 3 years. Will they win 1? Will they win 2? Will they win 0? What are we thinking?
I'll tell you where I'm sitting as the over-under on 0.5.
Okay.
I would say I think over the next 3 seasons, I think that they will win 1 more title.
Okay. Because I'd argue
I'm on the edge.
Yeah, I'd argue with you, like, if they win, say, 2 titles in 4 years and say they're in at least the Western Conference Finals or they're in the NBA Finals, say 3 out of 4 years. Like, you win 2 out of 4 and you're in contention for the other 2. That is, like, to me, that's like borderline dynasty era. Obviously, they win 2 or 3 in a row, then they're definitely a dynasty. I look at it this way, Tom. There's so much to like about this team. And there's a lot of disarray in the NBA right now. Like, there's a lot of teams that I don't trust. Like, I mean, like LeBron James, I've always trusted LeBron James, but the Lakers are at such, like, I mean, I think the Lakers are going to come back. They'll be in the playoffs this year. They'll be a contender, but they're in disarray. Like, Lakers are in disarray. Like, I can't say they're legitimately the team. The Suns, I mean, how much do we trust the Suns? The Suns, they're like the Chargers in the NFL. They're always choking.
I don't know if DeAndre Ayton's coming back. Yeah.
I don't know if DeAndre Ayton's coming back. Chris Paul, like, he wears down at the end of the series. Like, how much do we trust? You know, he hasn't taken that next step and he's getting old. Like, I don't trust the Suns. I really don't. Like, the Jazz, they're playoff chokers. I don't trust the Jazz. I mean, who do we have in the Western Conference? Like, maybe Dallas. They finally are getting Luka, a decent big man, but I don't think, you know, that's necessarily
Denver.
Like massive Denver. Okay, Denver. Okay, but can Michael Porter Jr. ever stay healthy? Can Jamal Murray stay healthy? Yes. We'll see, because like there's just a lot of question marks on all of these teams. Like Boston, we just saw they don't have a good enough offense. You know, the Nets have all sorts of chemistry issues. James Harden's not the same on the Sixers. I mean, we'll get into this here in a little bit with Boston's playoff run. But the only team that I look at in the NBA right now, and things can change with free agency and injuries, but I think there's one team right now that is capable of maybe beating the Warriors in a 7-game series, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks. And Boston, I don't think, was the best team in the East. They got lucky because Chris Middleton was out, Milwaukee's second best player. You know, if Chris Middleton played, the Bucks would have beaten the Celtics, and we would have had a Warriors-Celtics series. Think about this for the Warriors. They didn't trail a single series in the playoffs. They didn't have to go to 7 games in any series. They did trail Boston, 1-0, and then they were 2-1. But going into the finals, they led all the series. They beat Dallas in 5, Denver in 5, Memphis in 6, Boston in 6. Pretty dominant finals run. Like, I don't think we're getting enough credit. Like, people are talking about, like, oh, well, these guys aren't like what they were. Well, yeah, they didn't win 73 games. Like, okay, Draymond clearly not quite what he was. Maybe Clay's taking a step back. Steph, I think, is a lot closer to where he was than people think. Yeah, they don't have Durant, obviously, but they've got a lot of really, really good players. Like, we're not giving this team enough credit for how good of a team they are and just how far ahead they are of the rest of the league. I mean, this was one of the most dominant finals runs in modern history. I mean, they completely dominated. We had 7-game series left and right in the East. 7-game series, Dallas and Phoenix. What does Golden State do? They beat Dallas in 5. In 5 games. Could have been a sweep. They were so close to a sweep. Like, this is a really good basketball team. The only man I can maybe see them beating them is maybe Giannis. But what's the saying in the modern day NBA? 3 is worth more than 2. Like, you know, so I like Golden State chances to win multiple rings over the next 3 or 4 years.
Absolutely. Well, somebody, franchise that we can talk about dynasties certainly is the Boston Celtics, won 17 as a whole, but it's been a minute since anything's been possible for Beantown. So for Boston, do you think that they're going to be able to? I already know the answer to this. Why don't you think Boston is going to be able to make it back to the NBA Finals? I'll maybe take the will they, won't they. I know where you're already going on this one.
Yeah, I'm going no. I think this Boston team is, while athletic, while young, and it's interesting what you were talking about, Tom. And I was thinking of, do I agree or do I disagree with you? Because the sheer amount of games they played, that does take a physical and mental toll on you. But then again, it's Warriors have a lot of young guys too, but their star players are older. So you would think that the older guys would be tired in the finals, but it was the young players that were clearly tired for Boston. What does that say about that team? I don't know. I can see debates on either side, but that was what I was thinking of. Well, how come the young guys are the ones who are tired? Steph Curry looks just fine. He looks just fine out there. But I don't think so. I'm not going to answer this question exactly how you think it is, because I do think they're a couple pieces away. I will say this. If they add a legitimate point guard, maybe they get someone good in the draft, they have the potential to be a team that is consistently fighting for a championship for years to come. Obviously, the Celtics name, obviously the great front office that they have the potential to do it. But the current roster they have right now, no way. They're not getting back to the finals with this roster. I know it's easy to say, well, ifs, ands, or buts, you're making excuses, but let's be honest here. The Bucks won because they had a system. Giannis was a clear number one. Middleton was a clear number two. And we had the clear number three in Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is not a volume scorer. He can be an efficient player if he's taking less shots. What happened when Drew Holiday had to take a bunch more shots? He couldn't make anything. Drew Holiday is a great defender. He's a good point guard. He can run your team, much like maybe, Boston needs a Drew Holiday, a guy who could actually run the point and be that third, fourth option. But Drew Holiday clearly showed us that, you don't want him as your second leading scorer. You just don't. Let's be real. Milwaukee was up 3-2 on Boston in that series. If Chris Middleton had played in that series, Boston would not have beaten the Bucks in the second round. It just would not have happened. And even Miami, even though I think Boston's a little bit better and they had their own injuries, Miami was banged up too. They could have easily lost, quite frankly, all of the series they played on. You look at the Nets, they swept them, but there was a lot of close games in that series. I just don't think Boston has enough offense. Again, I don't think Tatum is a first-year star. I think he's got the potential to get there, maybe. But, you shoot 36.7% in the finals. Not a good look for you. He shot barely over 30% on 2-pointers. Nothing looks easy with them. They're kind of like that. They're almost like a Butler basketball team that Brad Stevens had. And you talk about taking the identity of your coach. I know he was the coach 2 years ago, but I know he's still a member of the front office. They win with defense, but it doesn't look smooth and easy. They don't have enough offensive talent. And they also, I don't know if they have clearly defined roles, because I think, to me, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are really, really close. They're really close. And statistically, they were really close. And in that final series, Brown was obviously playing better. Brown should have been getting a good chunk of the shots. And it almost felt like Tatum was forcing it because he thinks of himself as the leader. Whereas we know Curry will be, okay, you know what? Jordan's hot today. Clay's hot today. Andrew's hot today. I'll let you guys roll. So I don't know if they even have the teamwork and the structure offensively. They barely averaged more than 100 points per game in the finals, and that's when they scored 40 in the first, the fourth quarter of game one. You take out that 40-point quarter, they were under 100 points per game easily over the whole finals, and they don't have enough offense. They don't have a point guard. They don't really have a big man down low to get easy buckets. They don't have a guy who can drive to the hoop consistently and get easy buckets. Jason Tatum's not efficient enough at the rim. He really isn't. Like Steph Curry can score at the rim. LeBron can score at the rim. Giannis can score at the rim. Jason Tatum, not really his biggest skill. So I don't think this Boston team, as currently assembled, would get back to the finals. I don't think they would have gotten out of the second round had Middleton been there. But I do think they're not that far away. If they get a couple pieces, and if Tatum and Brown do take the next step, they could get there. So we'll see if they add those pieces that they need.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, where I think Boston certainly does have a good shot if you want to do the whole, will they or won't they? I think they're, less likely than Golden State to win a title over the next couple of years, in large part because the East is as difficult as it is. You have as many good teams in the East with, Miami being a pesky, you got Milwaukee, you got Philadelphia even as a bit of a threat, not to mention, with a couple of moves, our own Chicago Bulls hopefully maybe can be in this discussion too going forward. But
no Rudy. We don't need Gobert. You like Rudy? I think the Bulls like Rudy a lot.
Okay with it.
Maybe more than they should.
With Rudy Gobert. It depends. It all depends on the price.
Okay.
But with Jason Tatum, I believe he's 24. Jaylen Brown 25. I mean, these guys still have a good ways to go before they're right at their peak, right at their potential. I mean, even if you want to look at, like, we're so conditioned to think that stars are going to be incredible, but like Kevin Durant had to grow a bit. He had to go through his struggles. LeBron James had to go through struggles and grow himself. This could very easily be an early chapter in a long story for these two players, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, on their trip to winning perhaps an NBA Finals. I could also very easily see them being, perpetually almost there and not quite getting it. It's, in large part, is Boston able to shore up the front court a little bit? I mean, you can't really count on Al Horford, 35, 36 years old, being what he was this season. You can't really count on that next year. Marcus Smart, fantastic player on the wing, great as a 3-and-D option, but he can't really be the guy being your primary ball handler on offense and actually setting up and running the offense. You need somebody else to fill that role. So definitely holes for Boston. Absolutely can get back. I mean, they have the core pieces in place. Like if you're going to say, hey, you've got two mid-20, two-way NBA all-star, perhaps verging on superstars. Do you take that roster going forward? If you just have those two guys, I'd say, yeah, that's a really great place to be starting off, if not like the ideal place to be starting off. We've talked in previous shows about, is big three really how you win a championship? And we're kind of settling more into you need big two and then find that third person somewhere else on your roster without making that massive expenditure as far as salary goes or trading assets goes. So Boston, I think, is in a pretty good spot going forward to certainly be sitting atop the East. Not going to say they're definitely going to win a title, but I'm also not going to say that they're definitely not. I think they're in a pretty good spot going forward to have at least multiple bites at the proverbial apple.
Two real quick things. So I'm not going to harp on this too much, but again, Jason Tatum, 36.7% in the finals from the field, 31.5% from twos. He only made 65.6% of his free throws. So just, again, Jason Tatum needs to step up. This needs to be on him. He needs to show up and be a much better player. We'll see about Boston, but my quick, question for you, and I'm sure you might agree with this because I know you like Milwaukee. I mean, to me, just we haven't seen free agency. We haven't seen whatever, but I would say going into next season, for me at least, the clear-cut favorite in the East is Milwaukee. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. No, I absolutely would agree that Milwaukee is the clear-cut favorite going forward. Just as a quick point of reference, as far as Jason Tatum goes to check this, LeBron James in his first finals shot 35.6 from the field.
And I know where you're going to go with this.
There's growth with that, for sure, yeah.
And I know you're going there, but that's very, again, this does not sound like you're making excuses for the guy, but LeBron James was the only scoring option on that Cavs team. And, talk about a guy who carried the team coming off that legendary series against the Pistons. Sure. He also played against that great Spurs team. The Spurs were able to make LeBron into a jump shooter in that series because he hadn't grown with the shot at the time.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
right. But Jason Tatum already is already at a higher level of a shot. Jason Tatum wasn't able to finish at the rim. I think that's something that is harder to pick up. You're finishing at the rim than your jump shooting. I think that is a legitimate concern for me. And I think it's different because, not to say that Golden State didn't focus in on Tatum. However, I watched a lot of the games, Tom. He was not facing double teams in the finals. He really wasn't. I think a lot of it was one-on-one defense. LeBron James in those 07 finals faced double and triple teams. Like Jason Tatum, just comparing him to Durant and LeBron, it just rubs me wrong because I don't think he's in their class. He was playing one-on-one ball.
That's what I'm saying.
And
he
was
could
missing.
be if he grows enough.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think he can be. Those are two of the best players of this generation. I don't think he's a generational talent personally. And he didn't demand those double teams. I mean, you watch the final series, it was Jason Tatum going one-on-one against the Warriors' best defender. And he was being able to be handled one-on-one. That 07 Spurs team, they did not have anyone that was going to go one-on-one with LeBron James. They enacted the strategy of, we're going to let LeBron shoot, we're going to crowd the paint, and guess what? It worked. And LeBron grew from that, but I don't think that Tatum necessarily is going to grow from it personally. But that's just my take. I'm very low on Jason Tatum, and the NBA Finals are a good time for, the Tatum hate to get out there. Good time.
I would just say I'm willing to buy stock on Jason Tatum as a young developing player. Speaking of which, we have the NBA final, or not NBA finals, NBA draft coming up. So we'll just go really quickly with, top overall player. Who do you think is going to be the number one overall pick? And then this could be the same answer, maybe a different one, as overall best player in the draft. And then we'll also touch on over and underrated, just a player or two to kind of like clue in the audience a little bit. Certainly not a star-studded NBA draft. The what was that, 02 or the 03 draft? This certainly is not. I think you and I are a little bit different on our opinions of it. I don't think it's super strong, but I think you might even be a little bit down on that beyond mine.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty bad draft. I don't see a single Hall of Famer in this draft personally. I know that sounds like, like, oh my God, it's hard to make the Hall of Fame. But if you look at the vast majority of classes, not to say that there isn't some, but, in your average draft class, you do get a Hall of Famer. The only one that I could see doing that is Paolo Banquero, but I don't see multiple All-Star appearances from multiple players. There's going to be, maybe a guy that makes one All-Star game, maybe two, maybe someone else does. But I don't look at this draft, maybe with the exception of Banquero, as having players that it's like 5-time All-Star, 6-time All-Star, 7-time All-Star. I don't see these guys. You look at who's going to be drafted number 1 overall, Javari Smith out of Auburn. He shot the ball well from 3 last year, 42% from 3 at Auburn, but only 42.9% overall. Like, do we have a Jason Tatum on our hands here? I mean, how do you not shoot the ball from 2? What's going on? Like, it's like almost like the obsession with the 3-pointer is having guys not work enough on their 2-point shots. And that's not only mid-range shots, that's driving in the hoop and finishing. Like, I don't know. That statistic really rubs me wrong that Javari Smith shot so poorly from 2-pointers. My number 1 pick is Paolo Banquero. I think he is the most physically gifted player in the draft, without question, the best athlete. He's got bounce, he's got size, he's got strength, he's got speed. He's a small forward who can dribble and he could power you down. I mean, he's a guy that is maybe a little bit stronger than most small forwards. But then, like, if you put a power forward on him, he'll be quicker. So it's like a matchup nightmare. Like, he's built like an NBA player. Look at him. He's a buff dude, but he's buff while handling his athleticism. He's not getting injured like Zion Williamson. He's in a little bit better shape than Zion, not quite as buff as Zion. So Banquero, to me, is the best player in this draft. Averaged 17 and 8 as a freshman. I look for how do the guys perform during big moments. 20 points and 10 rebounds against UNC in the Final Four. It was not his fault they lost. He definitely did his part for Duke. He would have been on his way to being the Final Four player of the Final Four, like you predicted, had Duke pulled out that win against UNC. So I do like Banquero a lot personally. I think he's hands down the best player. I'm going to save my bust discussion for the next guy, because you might go with this guy as possibly your first guy. I have one guy who I like among the top guys, and I have one guy who I don't really like for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, I certainly like Javari Smith. I think he's going to be potentially, probably the number one overall pick. Reports saying that Orlando really likes him. I really like Chet Holmgren, and so he might be the bust to whom you are referring. But
Absolutely.
I mean, 18th in the nation in rebounds at 9.9 in a game. I mean, shoots pretty well across the board, almost 61% from the field, 39% from three, and is almost 4 blocks a game. So he contributes in a lot of different ways for a team. And, sure, he's got a bit of a lanky frame now. I mean, 195 pounds spread across 7 feet of height.
Get him some food.
He's obviously he's going to bulk up in the NBA and
take my pounds. Take them. Take them. I'll give them to you.
A GoFundMe for Chet Holmgren, weight based. He'll end up looking like a mix of he'll probably look like Shaq if everybody could give him weight. It's just too much. But no, I mean, he contributes in so many different ways. And the way that the modern NBA is going is you don't necessarily need a true post presence, like we're just mentioning with a Tim Duncan, Shaquille O'Neal, anybody like that. Shooting it from 3 and then being able to rebound, run the floor, and then block shots on the other end, be a rim protector, be somebody who alters shots on drives to the rim. That's all stuff that he excels at. So really, as far as being, the archetypical NBA big man in this current NBA, Chet Holmgren pretty much fits the bill across the board. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward. I know looking at free throw percentage, that's something that a lot of scouts look at in terms of, is that indicative of how well somebody's going to shoot at the NBA? Because the 3-point line is a little bit different. 72% from the line is pretty decent as far as Holmgren goes. So I think he's going to be a good to, really good player on the offensive end. And he's going to get enough, at least counting stats as far as shot blocks go, if not outright being a solid defender. Where I could definitely see Holmgren being, a multi-time All-Star in his NBA career.
Yeah, I don't see it. I think you look at a lot of those field goal percentage numbers. Gonzaga was clearly the best team. I think he's got high percentages because he's taken smart shots, but I don't see the killer instinct. I don't know if you remember our college radio show. There was a guy on Baylor, Perry Jones, and not to say that he was a very highly scouted NBA prospect, but he was considered a really good college player. And I would tell you about Perry Jones, he's not aggressive enough. He doesn't have that killer instinct. And we were talking about Drew Holiday, I love efficiency, but if you're efficient and you're scoring 10, 11 points a game, even 12, 13, 14 against some of these lesser teams, I don't see him being a multi-time, big-time scorer. I didn't like what I saw in the NCAA tournament against Arkansas and Memphis, 9, 11 points, 10 points per game in those big games. I don't think he's physically strong enough. I know it's a little different. You hear the Kevin Durant body, but Kevin Durant, I think, is he's quicker, he's better at dribbling, a much more perimeter-based player. Chet Holmgren is kind of a weird body. It's almost like there's a kid on my 8th grade basketball team that just looked awkward. He was tall, he could run fast, he could rebound, but he just didn't look right with the basketball. I know Chet's got some dribbling ability, but I don't think it's at the ability of Kevin Durant. I don't even know exactly per se what his position is, because I don't think he can bang down low with big guys. I think he'll get rejected in the NBA. I know he's a good shooter, and I think I can see him being as a pick and pop type guy, but I don't see him as an ISO player. I really don't see him as an ISO player because I don't know that he's good enough in the post, and I don't know that he's good enough on the perimeter. He's going to be dribbling past guys. So I don't know. I don't really like Chet Holmgren personally. I think he's got bust written all over him. I don't think he's going to make a single NBA All-Star game. So he's definitely my bust in this draft. I really don't see how he's going to be a great player. He's simply getting put there because of measurables, because he could shoot a little bit, because he's tall. Like, people want to fit into this narrative of like the modern day big man, but I think he's not good enough at anything particularly to me. So I just don't see him as a standout player in the NBA. I'm not saying he's going to be as bad as this guy, but I didn't like the Thunder pick Hashim Thabit, or was that the T-Wolves? Like, there was like a big man with the number 2 pick that ended up being a bust. And he was a great shot blocker, and that's about the only thing he did. So I'm sure Holmgren was going to get some shot blocks, but I don't see him being a legitimate scorer in the NBA. And if he can't score in the NBA, like, good luck. Good luck being an all-star in the NBA. Sorry, Chet Holmgren, you're not cutting it for me, at least. I could eat crow. I might eat crow when we talk about him 5 years from now. But Chet Holmgren, however you say it, definitely a bust in my book.
Yeah, no, I like him paired up with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in Oklahoma City this upcoming season to be a really, really fun duo. So in terms of overrated and bust, you probably already have touched on your biggest bust in the draft. Do you have a sneaky underrated pick? I know Desmond Bane was your guy. He's been fantastic for Memphis, quite frankly. Pick. Do you have anybody this year that you're really, really liking, or are you just so down across the board you don't think that there's any diamonds in this year rough?
I've got 2, and the diamond in the rough is maybe going to surprise you a little bit. So first off, I want to tell you who the second best player in this draft is. This is like a solid number 3 option on a team. Both of the guys I'm going to give you right now are guys who I look at as a solid number 3 on a championship level team. Like, if they're like a number 2, your team might be in trouble. But if you want a guy who's going to give you effort and help you win a championship, to me, the most underrated player among the top player names is Keegan Murray. Probably going to get drafted 5th or 6th. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. Obviously, depends on what teams do. But, it's a sophomore last year in the Big Ten, which, not necessarily known as the highest scoring league. Put up 23.5 points per game against some good defenses. 55% from the floor, 75% from the free throw line, 40% from 3. I love efficiency, Tom. You know how much I love efficiency. And Keegan Murray is very efficient while doing it in volume. Chet Holmgren might be efficient. You might get those transition layups, get those easy looks. But Keegan Murray is doing it as the clear number 1. Let's not forget, Chet wasn't even the leading scorer on his own team last year. That would be one of your favorite players, Drew Timme. So Keegan Murray out of Iowa, I think he's the second best player in this draft. I would pick him with the 2nd overall pick behind Banquero. As far as a guy who maybe is the 3rd, 4th, 5th best player in the draft, likely I saw a mock draft going 18th to our Chicago Bulls. It is a former Kansas Jayhawk. Here's the Mizzou guy going Kansas. I'm sure you can guess. Ochai Agbaji. He just won the national title. He was the best player on Kansas's national championship team. He can shoot the 3. He can dunk the basketball. He's athletic. He can play defense. He reminds me a lot of another former Kansas Jayhawk wing player, Andrew Wiggins. Shoot the ball, dunk the ball, athletic, plays good defense. Agbaji is a really solid player, I think, out of Kansas. Obviously knows how to win. And obviously in the NBA, if you're athletic and you can shoot, you're checking a lot of boxes. And he can play defense. Probably a better ISO scorer than Chet Holmgren. I know he did a lot of corner shooting, but at times he could ISO as well as the leading scorer on his college team. Unlike Chet, who was not the leading scorer on his college team, but we're going to pick him number 1, number 2 overall. So I really like Agbaji out of Kansas. It pains me to say it as a Mizzou guy, but you know what? The Bulls did pretty good with Kirk Heinrich, a Kansas pick. Dare I say they go back to the well with Agbaji. He could have like a very similar career to Kirk Heinrich, make the All-Star team, maybe even play for Team USA, a really respected professional, an above-average starter, which if you can get an above-average starter with the 18th overall pick, I'd say you did pretty good. That is my steal for, hopefully, our hometown Chicago Bulls. We'll see. They do like drafting players that played at big colleges. We've seen that a lot, like with the Bears. So they had that time where they would draft like all the Duke guys, like Dang, Duhan, like, or they would pick them up in free agency, Boozer. Like, you know, they love having those, like Noah at Florida. Zach LaVine, I know they didn't draft him, but Zach LaVine was a UCLA guy. I know the Bulls like getting those big name college program guys. Why don't we get another one this year?
So it is so funny that you mentioned Achayo Gubaji because I have him as my bust of the draft.
Oh, here we go.
Basically, like you mentioned, you know, good size, good scoring. But one thing that I know a lot of NBA scouts look at is assist to turnover ratio. He averaged 1.6 assists. He averaged 2.1 turnovers. That is not very good at all. I believe ESPN's RPM Real Plus Minus has him as the 42nd ranked prospect in the draft. Meanwhile, all these different projections and mock drafts have him going as a late lottery, you know, late first round pick. So Abaji for me is my bust just because I don't like some of those side, you know, peripheral numbers. I mean, you can put up points in college type of thing, but that doesn't necessarily translate. You know, hello, Jimmer Fredette. Hello, Adam Morrison. As far as guys who are great shooters, great dominant scorers, but don't necessarily have the other skills necessary to be a successful NBA player. So Abaji for me is unfortunately going to be a bust pick, and I hope and pray that he does not end up on the Chicago Bulls. Somebody that I do hope ends up on the Chicago Bulls is Tari Eason out of LSU. He's a 6'8" combo forward. He switches really well 1 to 4. And the reason I bring that up in particular is because we've seen in the, you know, especially in this past NBA Finals, how important that is to be able to switch on multiple positions. Something that actually
could do that too, by the way. Just saying. But go ahead.
I don't know if he has the same defensive chops, but I don't know if you noticed this with ABC's broadcast. Typically, when they list the starting five, they have, you know, like guard, center, forward. They didn't have that in the NBA Finals. Kind of like a more mainstream sign that we're moving away from the traditional 1 through 5 model of designated positions and going a little bit more positionless. So having somebody who can switch on defense is incredibly important because that, you know, helps hide some of your not as great defensive players and keeps a lot more pressure on the opposing team's best player. And we saw how much that matters as far as Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown's finals went, being able to keep pressure on them as ball handlers and not letting them take advantage of the easy looks on the floor. The reason why Tari Eason is going to be kind of like a late lottery, you know, mid-20s pick, not necessarily a great mid-range or three-point shooter, but to my mind, that's one of the easier things to be able to improve. If you have, you know, good court vision, can pass well within an offense, you can work your offensive shot and change things mechanically to get that to be better a lot more easily than you can just straight up God-given athletic ability and then also just defensive instincts, ability to switch type of thing. So I like Eason a lot. Might not necessarily be an all-star per se, but I definitely see him as being an incredibly important piece on a championship team sometime in the future. So that's my steal of the draft.
Yeah, real quickly, just you know, fight you a little bit on the Abaji pick. You know, I do love assist turnover ratio. However, 2 turnovers isn't such a high number. I know, like, that's a stat typically more reserved for point guards. I mean, you look at, you know, anytime you're the leading scorer, you're going to have the ball in your hands a decent amount of the time, given that he shot a pretty efficient percentage from the floor. 2 turnovers isn't that many. You know, he wasn't really asked to pass the ball at Kansas. They had 2 point guards on the roster, 2 like Division I starting point guards. They could only start one. They started Columbia's own DeJuan Harris, but Martin off the bench. Like, they had a big man down low in McCormick. They even had, who was the other guy, number 2 on their team? They kind of had 3 point guards on the team. Like, he just was not really asked to pass. Like, I'm not saying he's a great passer, but he's not going to have to be because I still look at him as like a 3rd, 4th option on the team. So that's where I don't read into the assist turnover ratio. Like, if you're getting 4 turnovers a game and 1 assist, okay, then I might be concerned. But 2 turnovers, I mean, if you look at like any player that plays considerable minutes, like everyone is getting at least 1, if not close to 2. That's not such a high number in my perspective. So that doesn't have me necessarily worried there. But we'll obviously see. I did say, Tom, I told you it would be good for the Bulls. Do you remember? And you said he'd be a G League guy. I said he'd be a rotational guy. Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah, rotational. He's rotational. Yeah, he is. Rotational. He got there. I didn't think he'd get there in his rookie year, but where he is now is where I thought he was going to be. Yeah.
You thought he might play G League, though. I said he was going to play big minutes, and he did.
Well, because of injury, yeah.
But I think he was just as good as some of the other guys,
Yeah, no, like he earned his way in. No, like I knew that he was going to get to this point as far as being a good rotational player. I just thought he was going to be buried a little bit more on the depth chart. But obviously, Alex Caruso, Lonzo Ball, Kobe White all missing time with injury for the Bulls. I basically was that Ayo had the door open for him, and he absolutely smashed through.
If you look at those guys, though, I think Lonzo, if he plays at his best, is better. But you look at Kobe White, Alex Caruso, Ayo Dosunmu, like those 3 guys, I'd argue are roughly the same player.
I don't think Kobe White's going to be on the Bulls this upcoming season.
Okay, well there you go. Even more minutes for Ayo.
Exactly, yeah.
You get what I'm saying though? Like he might not have gotten those minutes if those guys weren't hurt, but it's not that he was a downgrade to those guys. He was just as good as
for sure
any of those guys. And he's probably going to be better given how young he is. I mean, Lonzo, I think if Lonzo gets healthy, Lonzo might be a little bit better than him. But those other guys, I think he's just as good, if not better than.
Absolutely.
So, anyways, we'll see. This is all talk. You look up the online internet boards, and this is one of my favorites that comes across during NBA like mock drafts. Like there was so many guys who were slamming Giannis Antetokounmpo. I didn't even know who Giannis was when he got drafted. I'm sure you didn't either. So it's like we can sound like geniuses or we can sound completely dumb. And I think it is very hard when you're talking about 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. Obviously, they have room for growth. And obviously, some guys are just better because of athleticism in college. It's a different game. So it's really very hard to project. But my thought is that like every once in a while there is that guy like we knew LeBron was going to be great.
Sure, yeah.
Like I don't think there's like that type of guy in this draft personally. Like a slam dunk, you can say with almost certain confidence he's going to be great. I don't see that type of guy in this draft. That's just me.
Go Chet. Moving on to the NHL Finals, the Tampa Bay Lightning, after getting absolutely slammed 7-0, come back winning Game 3 of the series 6-2, showing the Avalanche that they're not going to run away and hide. And why should they? I mean, 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions, still very much in the series. I believe Kucherov left the ice with a bit of an injury. I didn't catch that one live, but from what I've been reading in game recaps, borderline, hit. And as far as cleanliness goes, does Tampa get to come back from a 2-0 deficit to win this series? Or do you think Avalanche are going to end up winning this one overall?
So this is a very hard series to predict because you look at what we've had. We've had 3 games. We've had 1 close game, 1 blowout win for the Lightning, and 1 like beyond blowout win for the Avs in that 7-0 game. It almost feels like when they got down like 3-4-0, the Lightning, like they've been in this spot before. They're like, you know what? We'll move on to the next game. They got behind 1-0 in game 3, and people are saying series is over, and they ended up winning 6-2. Most importantly in that game, Tom, over 6 goals hit, $50 to win $104 profit. That was the most important thing I took away from game 3 was the over hitting, which it's hit in every game in this series, by the way. If you like goals, the over is hit in every game in this series. But it's absolutely a total toss-up. I mean, you look at the Avalanche, Nathan McKinnon is one of the best players in the league. One would argue the Avalanche are fresher. Obviously, they haven't played as many playoff games this series. They haven't been in 2 straight Stanley Cups. So I see this series going one of 2 ways. Colorado, if they can win game 4, they can win this series in 5. Colorado could win this series in 6. However, if Tampa finds a way, which I'm saying they will, and this is in part because this is who I picked, so I'm not going to backtrack from my pick here. If this gets close, if we get to 7 games, Tampa Bay's experience, they've won 2 straight Stanley Cups, just the know-all how to do it in the Stanley Cup. Nikita Kucherov, you mentioned, Stamkos, those guys have put up insane numbers in the playoffs. Vasilevsky was horrendous to start the series. He was great in the last game. That goalie, that'll give him some confidence, get going for the rest of this series. So I think it's a total toss-up. Colorado is more likely to run away with it. I think Colorado, in part because of their dominant game 2, is going to score more total goals in this series. I think if we have another blowout, Colorado is more likely to have it. But I think the Lightning are going to find a way to knit and grit their way. They're going to get to game 7. They're probably going to get outshot. They're probably going to get outplayed. But they're going to find a way to win the cup. Tampa Bay Lightning, talking about dynasties, 3 in a row for Tampa Bay in 2022.
Yeah, in short, I have no reason to go against the Avalanche for winning the series. So I'm going to stick with my pick as well. Like second team. I went Calgary first, but Avalanche ever since.
Revised pick.
My revised pick, exactly.
I had the NBA Finals before the playoffs started. That does not happen very often. So I didn't have the Lightning. So I know we have our revised picks. But Warriors, I called them at the break. That was... And you had the Rams preseason last year. I thought that was the best pick, right?
I had Rams as soon as they made the Stafford trade.
There you go. So Tom got the NFL right. I got the NBA right. Hockey, we don't know what we're doing, but we're just going with it.
We're having fun. That's what we're doing with it. Really quickly, U.S. Open. Fitzpatrick winning his first title. I said Will Zalatoris is going to be there on the last day. Finished second for, I believe it's now the 3rd time in his career. Just absolutely devastating for him to be so close and come up short again. But Matt Fitzpatrick winning his first major. What were your thoughts on the U.S. Open?
A lot of bad scores, 6 under, not typically, you think typically the winner shoots better than that. Matt Fitzpatrick, 6 under, holding off Scottie Scheffler and Mo Zalatoris, who are both 5 under for his first major title. A lot of big names in the top 10. One of your adopted guys, Hideki Matsuyama, in 4th place. Colin Morikawa tied for 5th with my boy Rory McIlroy. So, Tom, last week on the show,
great week for my guys.
Rory to get first. He got 5th, tied for 5th. You picked Zalatoris. He got tied for 2nd. So we did pretty good with our U.S. Open picks. Pretty good. On the ball. With the U.S. Open picks. Other things that stood out, Jordan Spieth didn't do very well. I think he was +7. Phil Mickelson was dreadful, missing the cut. So some great players played great. Some great players, or at least historic players, played terrible. In all, the course was definitely very tough on the players. I did catch a little bit of it, but not a ton. I was working Sunday at my sports podcast job. With memorabilia, but overall, I guess it's exciting that it was close. So hats off to Matt Fitzpatrick. A lot of parity in golf, and obviously we got all these guys going to LIV. Brooks Koepka looks like the latest, but I don't want to get into that. This
we're
program.
Not going to.
So
no, we're
I think
not going to.
That does it for the U.S. Open.
Yeah, no, it was a really tough course. I was actually able to watch a decent portion of it on Father's Day. We had my father-in-law and the whole family over to celebrate that. And he is an avid golfer. So I saw, hey, I'll put this on. And we ended up spending solid couple hours watching some golf together. So that was really nice. And just a brutal course. We actually caught it at the perfect time because we were catching it right as, Scottie Scheffler and I forgot the guy that he was partnered with. And then Zalatoris and Fitzpatrick teed off right after that. So we got to see the guys who were at the top of the leaderboard heading into Sunday do a lot of that golf thing and just I mean, I'm gonna pretend a little bit to know what I'm talking about here. I guess the greens are small and the greens are fast, and that makes it really, really difficult as far as getting the scores down. But really compelling. Definitely felt like this was more surviving the course than necessarily beating or owning the course. So compelling overall, even if the scores weren't necessarily all that outstanding.
Yeah, Tom's father-in-law. You're channeling your inner father-in-law with
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
talking. I like it. I like it.
Absolutely. Moving on to betting locks of the week, I think as a show, we were slightly below 500 because we can either be above or below with odd numbers and odd number of hosts as well. How about you give us the recap?
Yeah, so 2-1 week for me. I had Warriors plus 3.5 at the Celtics in game 6. That was correct. Warriors winning 103-90. I had Steph over 28.5 points. He had 34. I believe Steph hit his over in 5 out of the 6 games. I think I bet it every time. It was at least 4, if not 5. So if you bet the Steph Curry over in the NBA Finals, you were definitely hitting. Clay over 21.5. I did say Warriors in 6 last week. I was spot on with everything except for Game 6 Clay. Game 6 Clay was not a thing, but it didn't have to be because it was Boston bricks, Boston turnovers, and Steph Curry just being Steph Curry in Game 6. So 2-1 week for me. Rebounding well here down the stretch. Tom, you were 1-2. You are, of course, still in first place, though, 70-3, 6 games over for you. You had Braves minus 1.5 over the Nationals at even money. That was correct. Braves winning 8-2. This is baseball from last week. You had Cards minus 1.5 over the Pirates. The Pirates won 6-4. And then I warned you not to do this, but, plus money Castleman is out here. It just doesn't work. NBA Finals series score prop. You had Warriors winning 4-3 at plus 40. Warriors did win 4-2 in 6 games. Drew was 1-2. He had the Celtics in game 6. I know Drew predicted the Bucks last year in the NBA Finals before the playoffs started. He was spot on last year. He butchered it this year. He had the Celtics prior to the finals. You and I both going with the Warriors. He was riding Celtic bets all series long. But Celtics did miss on the Warriors, losing 103-90. Avs Lightning, like I said, the over is hit in every game so far. Drew Brackett had it in game 1, over 6 goals. Actually was 4-3 in overtime, 7 goals. It was something like, you sent us a text. It was like 3-1 in the first period or something like that. And all of a sudden, like in the third period, like the goals just completely dried up, but it was 3-3. So Drew did hit that over, missed the Celtics, and then he had Webb Simpson to finish top 40 at the U.S. Open at plus 100. Webb Simpson didn't make the cut. More than 40 golfers did make the cut, so he was not in the top 40. Real quick, Drew's Locks. Drew is one of our co-hosts, taking a break for the summer. Hopefully we see him during football season. These were Drew's picks for this week. He had the Avs minus 110 over the Lightning. That is tomorrow, Wednesday night, 6:22 in Game 4. He's got Premier League Lacrosse League, of course. Drew loves some Premier League Lacrosse. Huge fan. The Water Dogs. Yeah, the Water Dogs. Water Dogs LC against Chaos. Under 23.5 goals. So, gotta love these lacrosse names. Water Dogs and Chaos. The more you know. And then MLS, DC United, and Nashville Soccer Club under 2.5 goals this weekend for Drew Brackett. So, Tom, we got to find the Premier League Lacrosse Water Dogs.
I guess so. Drew likes hitting his unders. I was just, as I was reading through that text, I saw, Premier League and I saw under and goals. I was like, wait, 23.5. I had to go back and reread the entire thing because I just assumed, Premier League soccer, although I think that's currently on hiatus in their off season right now.
It's back in late August, I think.
That was something. All right. So gonna go with the NBA draft. We have a couple of picks for that coming up. So I'm only going to give one of one pick where you're going to pay a little bit of juice, minus 110, Jalen Duran in the top 10.
Okay.
So go ahead and lock that in. I think he's going to end up in San Antonio if I had to guess. And then we're going plus money Castleman on the next two.
Here we go.
Find this on Bovada. It is a specially made wager that you can just punch and play with. Javari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banquero, the exact order for the first three picks. You can get that at plus 115. That seems to be the prevailing sentiment with a lot of mock drafts. Smith going to the Orlando Magic, Holmgren to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and Banquero to the Houston Rockets. So if you want a little bit of plus money following those mock drafts, plus 115, not bad. And then I will go to baseball on June 22nd. Give me Shohei Ohtani and the Angels minus 1.5 runs at plus 105 versus Daniel Lynch and the Kansas City Royals. Royals are absolutely dreadful. Ohtani is the opposite of dreadful. So I'm going with the Angels minus 1.5 on that one.
Yeah, Ohtani's teammates, though, pretty dreadful, most of them.
So
that's not the prettiest game, but I guess Ohtani probably going to get a lot of strikeouts.
Daniel Lynch has an ERA. He's pitching, yeah. Daniel Lynch has an ERA in the mid fives, so I think the Angels will be able to put up enough of distance, and Ohtani will be just fine on the mound.
Yeah, so I'm going with the mid 5 ERA guy as well, keeping that theme alive. Real quickly though, Tom, you do well with draft bets. You did pretty good with the NFL draft, so you read up on that stuff. You definitely do well. I hate betting stuff like that because I feel like I want to have some control, even though, to be honest, I have zero control.
We have no control
in any of the games. But anyways, I'm going to go a couple baseball games tomorrow. No games tonight, Tom. You'll like this. No games tonight. These are all games.
Wow.
All games tomorrow. I thought I would surprise you. So Wednesday, 6:22. I like the Yankees minus 1.5 at the Rays. That is plus 120 on DraftKings. So I'm giving you guys some plus money here.
Plus money came in.
We got Shane Baz on the mound for the Rays. He's a young Rays pitcher. 2 starts this year, 5.40 ERA. Jordan Montgomery for the Yankees, 3-1 with a 2.72 ERA.
That's a good one.
Yeah, New York is just so dominant right now. They're 50-17. 50-17. Think about that. 21-10 on the road. They've actually won 10 of their last 11. And if they didn't blow a lead against the Blue Jays, should be 11 of 11 during that 10 wins. They've got 7 of them by 2 or more. So they're not only winning, they're dominating. Last Friday, Tom, I put big money on the Yankees, and they blew out the Blue Jays. So I'm going to go with the team that's been good to me. The team that's been good to baseball. Best team in the league, hands down. Yankees beat the Rays by 2 or more on Wednesday. Sticking with Wednesday, sticking with the theme. We're going with good baseball teams to come through. One of these things, like if your bets lose, but you bet on a good team, yes, it's upsetting, but you can almost live with it because, they're supposed to win. So I like the Dodgers minus 1.5 at the Cincinnati Reds at minus 110. That also from DraftKings. Tim Anderson starting for LA, 8-0 this season with a 2.82 ERA, one of baseball's best teams against one of baseball's worst teams. I know the Reds are doing better since their cold start, but hey, it's the Dodgers and the Reds. Dodgers are 7 games over 500 on the road. Reds are 8 games under 500 at home. So Dodgers win by 2 or more on the road against the Reds. So I got the Yankees and Dodgers on the road, but maybe the 2 best teams in the league, both with dominant road wins. And then finally, I'm going to go up against Drew. What used to be the thing you shouldn't do. It used to be you go up against Drew, you lose. Ever since Drew started sending in these locks of the week via the phone and not being present for this segment, he started losing. So I probably would have not made this pick 2-3 months ago because it's just dangerous. However, being a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, with basically a must-win game on your home ice, that to me is even more dangerous. I got the Lightning at -115 over the Avalanche, game 4 at home, Tampa money line, looking to even the series at 2. Guess what? They were down 2-0 in the last series against the Rangers, came back home, won 2 in a row, went to New York on the road, won another, then they won game 6 at home. I'm not saying they're going to win the series in 6 because Colorado's another monster, but I do see them getting back on track in game 4. Kucherov, I'm hoping, is going to be fine off that injury. Vasilevsky was great in goal in the last game. Look for Vasilevsky to have another dominant performance in goal as the Lightning take out the Avalanche in game 4.
Awesome. So we will have a lot to look forward to next week on Locks of the Week. That takes us now to trivia. I've actually got a couple different ones. I had one prepped for the show today, and then a football player's comments made me think, okay, what's some interesting trivia behind there?
So
hit you with both. All right.
Yeah, it's early. We recorded early today. You've got plenty of time for dinner today,
So
Castleman.
In terms of trivia, I'll go with the really difficult one first. I'll go with baseball.
Okay. Here we go.
So last Wednesday, in a game against the Texas Rangers, the Houston Astros threw
I know this one.
2 immaculate innings in the game. How many immaculate innings have there been in MLB history?
Well, I thought that was the first, right?
Although, so that was the first time that 2 have been thrown in a game. I was just saying, in the entirety of baseball's history, how many immaculate innings have been thrown?
But it was the first time a team had done it twice in the same game.
First time a team had done it twice, and here's like an extra kicker, to the same 3 hitters. Incredible.
Awesome.
That's just so weird.
I watched SportsCenter, but I guess I missed that it was the same 3 hitters. So I guess
same 3 guys,
a matchup
different
thing.
pictures.
They had the analytics. I just watched Moneyball again yesterday. They had the analytics on those guys.
Yeah, but an immaculate inning, for viewers who don't know what that is where you strike out the side on 9 pitches. So it's strike 1, strike 2, strike 3 to all 3 hitters. It's the immaculate inning. So twice in one game has never been done before. But to kind of illustrate how rare it is, can you tell me how many immaculate innings there have been, period, in the entire history of baseball?
17.
No, more than that.
29.
No, you can go up a decent bit higher.
Okay, 112.
106.
Okay, pretty close.
Pretty close. 106 in the entirety of baseball history, and we happen to be alive to witness 2 in the same game.
So it's more likely that it doesn't happen in a given season. Because is that going back to the 1800s? Because I know they played baseball like 18 whatever for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to as long as they were keeping like track of strikeouts, basically, as a statistic. But yeah, that's just
probably something that happens roughly on average, give or take. I don't know when they started doing it once a season. We had it twice in the same game.
Yeah, so not as rare as a perfect game, but still an incredibly, incredibly rare feat. The other one is going to be perhaps a little bit easier. So Mercedes Lewis, a tight end for the Green Bay Packers and formerly from the Jacksonville Jaguars, wants to break the record of seasons played by a tight end. Can you give me the number of seasons and the 2 tight ends who currently share that record?
Well, I actually saw this article online.
Okay.
So it's 17, I believe, and he's trying to get to 18. It's Tony Gonzalez and Jason Witten. That's
correct. Yeah. So you're on top of your Twitter feed today as well.
Yes, I have been on top of my Twitter feed today. I've scrolled through Twitter quite a bit today, so I did see that. So there you go. Can't stump Cayman here. But hey, that's why, Witten and Gonzalez, we're talking about the tight ends earlier, like maybe Gronk in his prime, is in that discussion, didn't play as many seasons as those guys. So my trivia, this is actually fairly easy compared to what I normally give out. I know both of us have done incredibly well with trivia the last few weeks. I've actually been very proud of both of us. And we're big sports guys. We're pretty knowledgeable. And it shows when we have sports trivia, shows even more than betting locks of the week. So it's different when there's knowledge, just pure knowledge and a little luck involved. We did nail the NBA Finals, of course, too, though. Sports trivia. So I did hint at this earlier in the show. So players with multiple MVPs, an NBA Finals MVP, and a scoring title in their career. Steph Curry is one of 5 now. Can you name the other 4? They're all legends of the game. So, I mean, it makes sense. There's not like a name in there. Like, no name will surprise you.
Okay. So, first one that comes to mind is Michael Jordan, because I know he's gotten all those things.
Obviously.
So, there's Michael Jordan. Has LeBron won a scoring title?
He has.
All right.
So LeBron's 2.
LeBron's 2. So how many is there total? There's 4 others or 5 others, you said?
There's 2 others. So there's 5 total. Steph is 1.
Total, 2 more.
LeBron is 1. MJ's 1. So you're missing 2. This is multiple MVPs. I think you're about to stumble on a guy who's done this, but only has 1 MVP. Were you about to say Shaq?
Yes.
Because Shaq has a scoring title. He's got 3 NBA Finals MVPs. He does have a league MVP, but he only has 1 MVP, not multiple league MVPs. Curry has.
So would it be Kobe then, his teammate?
No, Kobe also only has 1 MVP.
Oh, that's right. Because that was the whole controversy of Steve Nash winning 2. Larry Bird?
Not Larry Bird. Larry Bird never won a scoring title.
Wow.
So he has the other accolades.
Right. I mean, we talked about him earlier because does Wilt have an NBA Finals MVP? Is he one of the guys? Okay, because I knew he had the other accolades. So the last one,
and it's funny because if you were to throw this question at me, this is the guy I would think of second after Jordan. So you're missing a really obvious one.
Is it Kareem then?
Kareem, yeah.
Awesome. I was going to say like maybe Durant, but I couldn't remember how many MVPs he had. I think he only has 1.
Durant has 1 MVP. That's the other thing. You're talking about Curry versus Durant, like Curry versus Kobe. Curry's been league MVP more than as much as those 2 guys combined.
Sure.
So, those are true legends of the game. And I was going to say, like, you can make a case for possibly those guys being the top 4 greatest players of all time. I mean, I know someone will say Kareem and Wilt maybe aren't quite there. I think I had Kareem as maybe 6 on my list and Wilt is 3. But you can make a case, who's to say maybe those are the top 4 greatest players ever, possibly. And that, I think, only strengthens Curry's argument as a top 10 player of all time. Because you look at the list of guys, I mean, I think almost everyone at least agrees that Wilt, Kareem, MJ, and LeBron are all in the top 10 at least. I think that's there's some people who are haters of a certain player, but, if you look at top 10 lists, there's very few that don't include all 4 of those guys. So those are the only 4 that have done it, and Steph Curry is joining such elite company. So, I mean, top 10, pretty fair to call Curry top 10 all time, I think.
I think, like we were talking about early in the show, he's right up there. So, nice on trivia. I think probably easier than we usually go on each other. So, not bad at all. Statements or salutes, what do you have?
So, a little rumors out there on the internet. We're approaching NBA free agency and such. And I've got a statement for NBA general managers, NBA fans, and particularly the Los Angeles Lakers. So one of the rumors on the interwebs is that the Lakers could be looking at Kyrie Irving, bring back Kyrie and LeBron. I know the prevailing one is Kyrie to the Knicks, but the Kyrie to the Lakers is out there floating on the interwebs. Los Angeles Lakers. You just went out and got yourself Russell Westbrook, a guy that makes his teammates worse. Why would you go after another guy that does the exact same thing? Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Dude didn't want to get vaccinated. He claims the earth is flat or not flat, whatever it is. He is a liability. He's not reliable. He even dared to go at LeBron James. Yes, he won a championship when he was the clear number 2, and he didn't have as big of an ego. It's almost like he hit that game-winning shot against the Warriors, and he's like, I am everything. Big Shot Bob hit the game-winning shot too. Steve Kerr hit a game-winning shot in the finals. Kyrie, get down to earth, get down to business, be a better teammate, be a better person, be a better leader. The Lakers are not going to win a championship again with LeBron James if they go the route of Kyrie Irving. It's just not. He is not a good fit for your team. That's not the type of guy I want on my team if I want to win a championship. It's almost like karma. I'm a big person who believes in karma and just your attitude and stuff. Like those little injuries that happen to him. Yeah, that happens because you don't want to play. You don't want to practice. You don't want to come back. That's what happens when you're not playing and stuff like that. So my message to the Lakers is do not go after Kyrie. I know they got the Westbrook, deal. Maybe they want to work something out there, but just don't go after Kyrie. Don't go there again. You're going to have to eat up Russell Westbrook or Westbrook as they call him. You made a mistake with him. Don't go down that same route. Whatever 1-2 years, whatever Westbrook has left, just get through these years, ship Westbrook away, and don't go the route of Kyrie Irving. I think Kyrie could be a great player with the Knicks. He can put up great numbers. He can get the spotlight. He can get the Knicks in as a 7-8 seed, lose in the first round. Kyrie probably will be happy in that situation where he's the guy, he's putting up the numbers, he's doing what he does. But, we talk about Jason Tatum, I say Jason Tatum is borderline top 10 player in the game. He's not a top 5 player. Kyrie Irving is, a top 10 player, borderline. He's more talented than Jason Tatum, but that's not the guy that you want as your best player to win a championship. But he's also a guy that I don't know is comfortable being the second best player. So Kyrie Irving, not a championship piece to me. Stay away from him in free agency if you want to win a ring. Stay away from him in trades. Just don't go after Kyrie.
But what if the Lakers got rid of Russell Westbrook in the process of getting Kyrie? Is that enough of a net trade-off? Russell Westbrook.
I would rather have it, but and I don't know the contract. I probably have to look at the contracts, Tom. Mm-hmm. Maybe you know them better. But I just don't think that Kyrie is a long-term solution. If they could do something where they have Kyrie for 1 year instead of Westbrook for 1 year, I guess that's an upgrade. But I just don't you know what I'm saying? I don't think that he should be in LA long term. Let me look this up.
Yeah, no, Westbrook has Westbrook has 1 more year left on his. It's a player option, so he could theoretically not opt into the 41.
He's not going to though. He's getting paid so much.
Yeah, he's going to get paid a lot of money.
What's Kyrie's deal? I'm trying to look it up right now, or do you have it?
I don't have Kyrie's deal up in front of me, but I imagine it's definitely for more years because he made a pretty sizable commitment along with Kevin Durant. So I'd imagine he still has 3 years or 2 years left on the deal. But no, this is the classic case of the Lakers want everybody for a bag of peanuts and a second round draft pick that's top 55 protected. I don't think that this is very likely to happen, quite frankly, because too many moving parts. It would take too much to get Kyrie Irving. I mean, Brooklyn would need to get bona fide stars, or at least a bona fide star back to make the deal even worth thinking about. I mean, I could see it being more likely that Ben Simmons gets traded if they want to swap out Russell Westbrook for Ben Simmons. I could see that maybe being something that the Lakers and Nets would pursue.
Why don't we
just because
go
that's
after more
feasible,
guys who
but
may not play games? Why don't we just do that? Why don't we
I
do
don't know.
more? Why don't we go after more guys who we have question marks about? By the way,
Kyrie yes.
Irving's deal, Tom, is actually up after this year. Kyrie's got a player option himself. If he declines the player option, he has until June 29th, I think I just read. He declines the player option. Kyrie could be a free agent this year. Otherwise, he would have 1 year left on his deal if he opts into it. So he's got a similar deal for Westbrook. So maybe in a 1 year situation, but I don't want any of those guys. I don't want Kyrie. I don't want Westbrook, and I don't want Ben Simmons. I don't want any of those guys if I'm a team. I really don't. That's just me.
I mean, I don't put too much stock into it. The Lakers are pretty much locked in with the roster that they have, minus like veteran minimum fill outs, whatever, for the bottom of the roster. I don't think that's very likely to happen because, again, this is just something that Lakers Twitter, social media loves to do of, we can get this guy if we just cobble together enough junk. It's like, no, that's why people have garage sales. Like, that's not how this is going to work. For my statement of the week, rather, it's going to be a salute. So Lorenzo Cain,
the Cain train,
over this past week has been designated for assignment by the Milwaukee Brewers. Cain is 36 years old, and this season has been slashing 179, 231, 234. So that's batting average, on base percentage, and slugging percentage. So all of it is quite dreadful, with a WRC plus of 31.
Okay.
For context, 100 is considered average. Every point above is a point above average. Every point below is below average. So he is 79% below average, basically, as an offensive player. So while he can potentially play elsewhere at this age and production of his career, it's pretty likely that he's going to be done. So why is this significant? Why am I bringing this up? The Milwaukee Brewers, who drafted Lorenzo Cain and brought him up in 2010 for his big league debut, waited until the exact 10-year mark of him being a professional in Major League Baseball to designate him for assignment in case he's not able to sign or doesn't end up signing with another team. This is significant because this means he now is a fully vested veteran in the MLB, not the MLB, a fully vested veteran. He is entitled to now a full pension, full health benefits as a retired player for MLB. So just like to call out those sorts of things as a classy move by that organization. Not terribly dissimilar from the Milwaukee Bucks, who made sure that Drew Holiday started the last game of the season so that he would get his bonus. It's one of those things where, Brewers are trying to contend for a division title, perhaps trying to contend for the World Series as well. We'll see over the course of the season how close they actually are to that mark. But to carry a player who, quite frankly, just wasn't carrying his weight at this point in his career, to hold on to him until a point that he was a fully vested veteran, just a really, really classy move. And tip of the cap to the Milwaukee Brewers. Great move on their part.
Absolutely. And I was literally, Tom, as soon as you were saying it, I didn't want to cut you off, but I was going to transition into that saying the Milwaukee Bucks, like you said.
Yeah.
I think the last game of the season, I think Holiday had X amount of money. If he starts X amount of games and they put him in for like the first minute or whatever it was, took him out, got his money, his bonus. Class and karma does go a long way. And maybe something about the city of Milwaukee. Maybe they're just really classy people over there. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is an outlier. The rest of the city is just good people. Maybe I
have heard good things about Milwaukee.
Okay. Well, I've been to Milwaukee, and my brief experiences in Milwaukee were good, for the record. So I don't know if it's like Canada. Like, everyone in Canada is nice. I was just talking to someone who went to Canada, and they're like, yes, everyone there was nice. So maybe Milwaukee is the Canada of America. Maybe. I guess technically Rodgers is in Green Bay, so that's different. He isn't in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and Milwaukee considerably shorter than the northern border.
Yeah, so there you go. I like that. That's cool. That's a nice little tidbit. Lorenzo Cain, former Royal, I believe, the Cain train, right?
Yeah, he was a pretty significant member of their
Won the
World
World
Series
Series.
championship team. Yeah, center field. A team that didn't really have great individual talent, but they had great base running, great defense,
Like the
and
'05
of
White
course a
Sox.
great bullpen. Yeah,
The '05 White Sox, same deal, except for the White Sox did it with starting pitching. The Royals did it with bullpen. But it was like
well, the White Sox did it with bullpen as well. Because I'm trying to
Big Bobby
remember this off the
Jenks.
top of my head. No, not even Bobby Jenks. I believe it was the combination of Dustin Hermanson, Neil Kotz, and Cliff Polite. The three of them, their combined season was as good as 2003 Pedro Martinez's season.
Okay.
So like that's and
they just
that's
weren't used
widely,
as much. But yes.
Yeah, it utilized in a different manner. But when you combine everything that those three guys did over the course of the season, they were the three of them just as good as Pedro in what is widely considered one of the best pitching seasons of all time. So White Sox had a great bullpen too. Yeah, outside of Bobby Jenks, just found ways to make it work. Royals did the same thing in 2015.
2015. Prime Pedro Martinez. I would say maybe his prime wasn't as long as Roger Clemens and Greg Maddux, but prime Pedro, the best pitcher I've ever seen in my life. Best pitcher in baseball history that I've seen, at least. Maybe like I didn't see Kirk Gibson pitch, but like, or not Kirk. I always do that. Isn't it Bob Gibson? And I always say Kirk Gibson because the Dodgers player.
Oh, yeah. No, Bob Gibson is the Cardinals
Bob Gibson. Pitcher, I always do that. I always do it. But messing up my Gibsons. But I didn't watch some of those guys back in the day. But in my time, prime Pedro Martinez, the best pitcher. Real quickly, I saw something someone said on the internet, and I'm blanking who it was. Maybe a little bit of a stretch, but someone said that Derek Jeter, if he was in Kansas City, he would just be a normal player, like kind of alluding to how overhyped he was because of New York. And the first thought to mind that came to me was the second baseman they have now in Kansas City.
Whit Merrifield,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think Jeter's a little bit better than him, but you look at their numbers, it's like, okay, that's basically like, imagine if, because Witt is like a multi-time All-Star. I think he led the league in hits a few years ago. I mean, like, he's a fantastic player. So I just thought it was like really funny because that's the first thing I thought of this afternoon. I was all over the Twitter today, Tom, as you saw with trivia. Didn't have my work meeting, a little extra time to go on Twitter, all over it. I was doing show research. I was searching some NBA mock draft stuff on Twitter, and a lot of other stuff came up as well. So I think that does it, though. Anything else you want to add?
No, just that Derek Jeter definitely overrated.
Agreed. Great player, but like, why would anyone be upset that he's not the first unanimous, or like Mariano Rivera, whatever was the first, but like people are upset that he wouldn't be a unanimous Hall of Famer. I'm like, there's probably 20 players at least that are better than Derek Jeter, at least. So he should not be.
Yeah, more than that. Yeah,
more than that. Exactly.
He wasn't even the best shortstop when they had Alex Rodriguez on the team. He wasn't even the best shortstop on the team.
So, anyways, that's just we're on the same page there, Tom. We're on the same page.
Oh yeah,
Hall of Famer, sure, but not like
superstar. Yeah, no, but definitely a product of the East Coast market, to be sure.
Yes, not like a guy that I would ever assume to be unanimous. Like, there's so many other guys who would deserve that honor more. That'll do it for the show, though. Ended up being a fun show, a long show. We were talking about like, sports. What are we going to talk about? We found plenty to talk about this week. Hopefully we find plenty more next week. That'll do it for the show. Thank you, Tom. Thank you to all the listeners, viewers. We will see you guys next week.